right. Hello. Good evening, everyone. We are about to start, and so just to get everyone just warmed up and in a good mood to vote yes. Joking. We're just going to do a fun kind of game to see, because part of the BGM is reflecting on our past year. And so I have 4 questions, and once I ask the first question, if you have the answer, will you shoot up your hand, and then I'll point it to you, and then there's small prizes for the people who get the right answers. Okay, so the first question is, name the new ministry that Murray Brown and Pastor Richard started this year. Whoa! I feel like I heard a noise there. Oh, is it? Okay, Kuna. No. Second places, we can get a shared gift there. A second places ministry, everyone. So if you are involved in any profession, I encourage you to join the second places ministry. All right, question number 2. What was the name of the holiday club theme this year? I saw Margie's hand. Encanto. Yeah, staff are not allowed. Encanto, well done, Margie. Okay. Third question, everyone. How long has Shelley Seiler worked at RUC? 28 years. Sorry. What? And then the final question, everyone. Now, no shouting out the answers, just raise your hand. How many weeks has the Matthew series been running for this year? Whoa. And Jenny. How is it? No, I've got the actual number here. Wow, spot on. Wow, okay. That's Dave's wife, everyone. Thank you. All right, church family, so thank you so much for being here tonight, and I hope you've had some food. Grab your coffee, and Ali and Kristen are going to plug up, and we're going to start with worship, everyone. So, yeah. Coffee first, worship in 2 minutes, everyone. Thank you. I think start talking.
Well, good evening, everybody. Hello, everyone. Good evening. There we go. see so many of you here this evening. Please will you stand with us and let's worship together. Your glory's cause, oh God, outrages our hearts. May Jesus Christ be known wherever we are. We ask not for ourselves, but for your renown. The cross has saved us, so we pray. Your kingdom come, let your kingdom come, let your will be done, so that everyone might know your name. Let your sound be heard everywhere on earth, till your sovereign work on earth is done. Let your kingdom come. Give us your strength, oh God, and courage to speak. Perform your wondrous deeds through those who are weak. Lord, use us as you want, whatever the test. By grace we'll preach your gospel till our dying breath. Let your kingdom come, let your will be done, so that everyone might know your name. Let your sound be heard everywhere on earth, till your sovereign work on earth is done. Let's sing that again. Let your kingdom come, let your will be done, so that everyone might know your name. Oh, let your sound be heard everywhere, till your sovereign work on earth is done. Let your kingdom come. Let your kingdom come. If faith can move the mountains, let the mountains move. We come with expectation, waiting here for you. Waiting here for you. You're the Lord of all creation, and still you know my heart, the author of salvation. You loved us from the start. Waiting here for you, with our hands adore, singing You are everything you promised. Your faithfulness is true, and we're desperate for your presence. All we need is you. Waiting here for you with our hands lifted high in praise. And it's you we adore, singing hallelujah. We're singing waiting here for you with our hands that lifted high in praise. And it's you we adore. We're singing hallelujah. We're singing hallelujah. Please be seated.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the biennial general meeting at Rosebank. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the great attendance. It's going to make the issue of the quorum quick and easy. I'd just like to start by just reading something from Psalm 127, which I think is quite important, and you'll also understand the significance of this later on in the evening. Psalm 127. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. It is in vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives to his beloved sheep. Let us pray. Lord, we just come to you this evening. We thank you that you have drawn us together. We thank you that we are joint heirs with your Son in your kingdom, Lord. We thank you for your gospel, for the kingdom of heaven that we are learning about at this present time, Lord. We thank you that you give to your beloved sheep. We thank you that you give us rest, that you take away our toil because we can lean on you. We know your invitation, come to me all who are weary, and I will give you rest, Lord. So we thank you for this, Lord. We just pray for this evening, this meeting that we're having tonight, Lord, as we reflect on some of the work done in 2023, and we look forward to some things that we're doing for 2024, Lord. We just pray for all the decisions. We pray for your Spirit to guide each one of us as members in voting and setting your church on the course that it needs to go on. Thank you, Jesus. Amen. Right, well, welcome again, members, brothers and sisters in Christ. Welcome to the biannual general meeting. At Rosebank, things are always a little bit confusing. The first thing, of course, is that Rosebank Union Church is not in Rosebank. The second thing is that the BGM that's held in 2024, the BGM that's held in 2023 is actually to deal with issues in 2024. And the AGM that you're going to come to in March 2024 is actually for 2023. But I'll let you ponder that sometime while you're lying awake at night, trying to decide which chapter of Matthew you're in. Okay. I was very pleased that one of the answers to the warm-up questions, which was, how many weeks have we been doing Matthew for, was not going to be way too many. Right, this evening, at Rosebank, we have a very high view of Scripture, as promoted by our senior pastor, and I thought that it was actually quite fitting that, the number 12 is very biblical. There were 12 tribes of Israel, there were 12 disciples, and tonight there's also 12 things that you've got to do. You've got to vote 12 times, so if you can count on your hands and you run out of fingers, you need 2 toes. And by the time you voted 12 times, we can all go home. The good news is that hopefully we'll get 75% of this meeting out of the way in the next 10 minutes. And then we'll spend the rest of the time just looking at the last 2 votes. Right, so what I'd like to do is just check that I just want to confirm that we have a quorum. And the good news is that we actually have one in person. Normally we have to have the online and the in-person people to make a quorum. But obviously having it in the Jerusalem Hall, people wanted to see what this place is about or what the food was about. And thanks very much to Grant in the kitchen for that. But well done, we've got a quorum, so we can proceed. We've got 922 members now. We had 846 as of March, so we are growing nicely. Thank you very much for that. Okay, I just want to also cover apologies. The first apology that I've got for this evening is Jenny and Andre Curtin. It's a tough life when you're on the EGB and you've got your 40th wedding anniversary because you end up in Mauritius. So we just decided to allow them to go. They might even be online. I'm not sure if they are online, but they said they were going to be online. I said, I'm sure that if I was in Mauritius, I'd have internet connection problems for sure. So that's apologies. I don't know if we've got any other apologies that anybody wants to report on. Perhaps if you do have them, you can just give them to me afterwards, and we can just note them for the minutes. Okay. Right, we've got the meeting quorum done. I think we're going to get straight on to item 3. So the first thing I just need to check. If you are sitting in this room, hopefully you are checked in, and you also have one of these pieces of paper, which has got these fancy little dots and dashes on the side called a QR code, quick response code. And I hope that you brought your phones with you, and that your phones are able to read those QR codes. Because otherwise it's a heck of a thing to type into that little word underneath it, form type com to LEFH, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so can you just get that ready, get your phones ready, and get your note ready. Vote number 1, 2, and 3 will cover the re-election of elders, the election of new elders, and also the election of the EGB member. So that's 4 votes for the re-election of elders, 5 votes for the new elders, and 1 vote for election to EGB. So if I can switch over to the, if we can go to the slide of the re-election of elders. As you know, in terms of the rules, elders serve for a period of 3 years. After 3 years, if they wish to serve another 3 years, they stand for re-election. Of the current... Easy. They want to make this more official. I've got to stand here now. Right, so we were in the process of voting for the re-election of elders. So as I said, if you're an elder, you serve for 3 years. When you come to the end of the 3 years, you need to serve. You want to serve for a second term. You stand again, and in that process, that you then obviously it's subject to the members giving you a vote of approval for your second term. We have 4 elders that are standing again for the second term. Notably, 3 of them are on the EGB. So if you want Richard to do all the work next year, then you would obviously decide that the members of the EGB, they're pretty critical in terms of getting on with that work. So the people that are returning elders are Bruce Fannin. Bruce is our current treasurer and also our HR committee member. So he's standing again for another 3 years. But specifically, for his last 1 year that he can serve on the EGB. Okay. The second person is Andre Curtin. Andre Curtin's only been on the EGB for two years, so he actually can serve for another 2 years on the basis of the re-election tonight anyway, but he has done his first 3 years of term. The third person is David Laithwaite. David Laithwaite is our head of our HR committee on the EGB. David is kindly standing for another term. Obviously, again, he will have 1 more year on the EGB before he uses up his 4 years. So that's that's David. And then our last person is Vianney. Vianney is one of our elders, was elected in 2020, so he served 21, 22, and 23. And Vianney is currently the person that does look after our campus outreach as part of his actual function, but he's an elder of the church, so he's going to continue again. Right. So to get 4 of the 12 votes out of the way, you can access your app now, and please click on that. When you've finished, when you've done this, just don't turn off your phones or don't do anything, because you've got to finish this voting cycle and then you've got to press submit. Okay, so if you don't do that, then nothing gets submitted. So just vote on the first 4. If you need a paper vote, please raise your hand now. Okay, right. So, guys, who's doing the paper votes? The paper votes, there are separate pages. The first page consists of the re-election of elders, so you can vote on that, and then you can hand that one in. Okay. And I need to make sure that the chairman doesn't forget to vote as well. No, I've got my... Right, so you should have at this stage of the evening completed 4 votes. Right, if you have, just keep your phones nearby and just hold on to your horses. Let's get the next set of elders of election out of the way. So the next stage is to effectively re-elect new elders. Now, the reason for the re-election of new elders will become apparent by the end of the meeting, because there's quite a lot of retiring elders. And obviously we want to keep up the numbers at about 20 elders in total. So we've managed to have 5 names that were nominated to be elders. The nominations committee that was set went through each of the nominations and has recommended all 5 of them. So I'm just going to go through their names as they come up on the screen. Right, so the first person we have is Jonathan Gowden. Right, what we're doing is we're getting rid of accountants and bringing in engineers here. So, okay. Right, so that's Jonathan. Jonathan is one of the elders. He's one of the people's new elders standing for election. He has been involved in the church for a long time, so we've raised it. The details have always been in the meeting pack, so you should have been aware of that. The next, Noni Magagula, right? Very pleased that we've got Noni coming or planning to come on board. If you know anything about Noni, she's the wife of Tito, or Tito's the husband of Noni. I'm not quite sure which order that is, but we'll go with both of them, right? And so no stranger to Rosebank and ability to step forward, and we're very pleased that she's put herself up for nomination. Then we've got Andrew. We're not quite sure if Andrew's in finance or engineering, but we're not going to have a big debate about it this evening. But he is actually a trained engineer, but he seems to be in finance. Andrew is also willing to stand. Andrew is, interesting fact about Andrew, he's actually completing his master's in divinity as we speak. So that's so if you have a particular question on Matthew that you felt you didn't get the answer from attending Sunday, speak to Andrew. Okay. The next person. Right. The next person is Mapitso. So welcome to Mapitso. She's also great to have her stepping forward to join the elder group. And we certainly hope that we certainly trust that she's going to be making a great impression as a shepherding elder. And then last but not least is John Shuttleworth. John, as you know, is currently also involved at Rays of Hope. We think this is a very useful instance where he can bring information about Rays of Hope right into the elder group as well. So we think that's a very positive move. And we know that John has got a heart for Rosebank, and we certainly welcome him. Right, so we've got 5 new elders. We'd like you to consider all of those 5 elders. Go to vote 2, and you'll have 2A, E, B, C, D, E. If you're doing it by paper, go to page 2 of your paper, tick the appropriate boxes, and move forward from there. Right, has everybody, just a quick show of hands, has everybody got to the end of vote 2? Right. The good news is that we're 75% through the voting of the evening. Right. Okay, then the last vote in connection with re-election of elders and EGB member is that, as you're aware, that because of rotation requirements, just to make sure that there's space, and in order to facilitate rotation, I'm stepping down off the EGB, so it's actually creating a space there. And obviously that means that we need to nominate one of the elders for the EGB position. What happens, just to remind you in terms of the rules, the elders consider that nominations are received and the elders vote to select a particular person. There was one nomination for the EGB position, and that's Jonathan. And so the elders unanimously or collectively agreed to that. And now it actually goes to the members for voting, and you need to approve it, and it needs a 66% majority vote. Right, so if you can do vote 3, and once you've done vote 3, then please hit the submit button. Okay. Everybody okay with that? So just below the in favor or opposed, there's a submit blue button on your screen. please tap that. And if you've got a sign on your screen that says return to BGM page, you've done well. Well done, good and faithful voters. Okay, I'll allow us just a few minutes just to collect up the votes. Right, have we collected all the, is there any paper? I see there's a paper vote over there. Please just collect that. Our secretary, our appointed church secretary on the EGB, which is not a secretary in the sense of minute taking, but a secretary in terms of the functional issues around the constitutional rules. Ray Sinclaire, he's busy doing the scrutineering of it and just checking that Shime is adding it all up. So remember, the voting tonight will be a combination of people that have voted through the system, either in person or online, plus the paper votes that are being cast. Okay, thank you very much for that. Now what we're going to do is move on in terms of presentations, and two presentations. The first one, obviously, is Richard's going to take over. And he's much better at talking than I am, so that's great. And then Bruce will follow on from that with the budget. So, Richard, over to you. Thanks.
I don't know if I'm better at talking, Roy, or I just talk a lot and a lot more. Well, hello, good evening, church. It's so good to see so many of you here tonight, and I feel like we got some important business, as always, in a general meeting, but for me, this particular slot, it feels like this could be quite a pivotal moment for our church. So allow me some time to do a lot of background presentation work on the proposal to call Bafana as our outreach pastor. So the segment is called Assignment Alex, and that title, Assignment Alex, actually goes back to the title Assignment Joburg, which goes back to 2021, so March 2021, and the Nexus. Hands up if you've heard the Nexus. Okay, only a few of you, all right. Well, every new members class and those who were around back then would know the Nexus. This is not something you will find on our website. This is a leadership-facing strategy paradigm that we use, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing tonight. If you haven't come to a new members class, feel free to come. But where Assignment Joburg and Assignment Alex comes from is that vector there. We call that a vector. Yes, engineers, this is what we do. So vector 2, which we describe as our distinct calling. In other words, we're trying to answer the question, where is God directing our attention at this particular time? That's just a very different question to vectors 1 and 2. And so distinct calling is that vector. And since 2021, the picture in our minds has been this phrase or this picture, Assignment Joburg. And where that language comes from, because it's quite curious language, is a scripture that I preached on back then, 2 Corinthians 10, verse 13, which says, in the ESV, but we will not boast beyond limits, but will boast only with regard to the, listen to this, area of influence God has assigned to us to reach even to you. It's just interesting. There's an area of influence that God has assigned Paul as he's writing this. And he said, that's our area, and that's where we're focusing on. That's the ESV. And then Ndaba's independent version says, we, however, will not boast beyond proper limits, but will confine our boasting, and here's just different language, but same idea, to the sphere of service God himself has assigned to us, a sphere that also includes you. And so this idea of God assigns a particular sphere of service or area of influence to churches, and Paul's convinced that that applies to the Corinthians. And so thinking through that, just the idea that kept coming up was reclaiming, as Rosebank, reclaiming a missional focus on Joburg. It's always been their global missions, and no, not going to diminish that at all, but to reclaim a sincere effort to expand our ministry influence across Joburg. And like the reasons for that is, I've shared this a few times before, but it's so personal to me. The reason, one of the key moments in me deciding to come to Rosebank was at my interview, and at the second round of interviews, Chairman of the Core Committee, Dave Gerson, just asked if I had questions, and so I asked, guys, so what's on your horizon? What's on your agenda? What are you as a church, what problem are you trying to solve, or what big thing are you trying to do? And everyone ran around the table, and there was quite a few things, diversity, leadership structure, but then it came back to, and it was Dave himself who said this, said that he said, we don't think we are fully utilizing the potential that Rosebank has, given our strategic location. Right, and it is a very strategic location here. I mean, it's just amazing how God made this happen 25 years ago, that moving to this site. But, I mean, for example, when they renamed William Nicol Drive to Winnie Mandela Drive, the whole ceremony happened like right outside our building, right? So strategic location, heritage, 117, 18 years, 17 years now, heritage, along with just, the good name of Rosebank and resources. And so how can we use that to really actually make an impact on Joburg? And so that's what Assignment Joburg became, is this area of influence and trying to use what we have to make a difference. And what that resulted in, the first step was campus outreach, so taking that ministry on board, which remains to this day one of the best decisions we ever made. Shout out to Vuyani and Klankla and saw Kauhelo over there. But campus outreach, that whole thing was based on wanting to reach Joburg. There's a university, it's the greatest university in the country, Wits, and so campus outreach, then JBC, and Alex obviously was a big part of that as well. Now we're really narrowing Assignment Joburg to Assignment Alex, because our sphere of influence, or the area of influence that God has assigned to us, has to include the township of Alexandra, for two reasons. One, proximity. I mean, we are less than 10 Ks from here, by road, from here to the middle of Alex. So just think about a 10K radius. That's within a 10K radius. If you go east, you're in the middle of Alex. If you go north 10 Ks, you're in Bryanston. If you go south 10 Ks, you're in Rosebank. If you go west 10 Ks, you're in Randburg. And we would say all of those, Bryanston, Rosebank, Randburg, we would say those are our areas of influence, aren't they? I mean, you all live there. And so why not east? Why are we missing the 10K east area? So proximity, definitely we see that as part of the area of influence that God has assigned to us. And then secondly, just impact. If you think of the strategic potential of being able to do ministry in a township. I mentioned this in the service the other day, but latest census figures, 50% of Gauteng's population are in townships. And so if you're serious about actually seeing change, I mean, we all want to see South Africa be a better place, right? And how's that going to happen? It's only going to happen through a gospel witness, an authentic gospel witness. There just is no other genuine hope. And here you have a lot of people in a small space. It's an incredibly strategic opportunity for us. And so, I mean, that's why Assignment Alex is now Assignment Joburg. We're focusing even more on Assignment Alex. Of course, that's not anything new. This church started Rays of Hope 31 years ago, and back then even dreamed of something like a church plant in Alex. So it was a dream even back then that something like Rays of Hope could end up being a church plant. And so before getting into the plan, let me just tell you a little bit more about our neighboring city east of where we are here in Sandton, the township of Alexandra. And that's a pretty cool picture, right? You've got Alex in the foreground and you've got the Sandton skyline in the background, and I'll make some comments on that. So the township of Alexandra is officially the oldest township in the country. To actually be formally constituted a township, 1912 is when Alexandra was first founded. So going on 113 years, no, my maths is bad as an engineer. Going on a long, long time, oldest township in South Africa. The story goes that the land was originally owned by a farmer, Mr. H.B. Pappenfuss, who tried to establish a white residential area there and who named that land after his wife, Alexandra. Some accounts say it was his daughter, Alexandra, not this Alexandra, his daughter, Alexandra. Some say it was Queen Alexandra. So don't know, but a connection to this person who bought the land. But because it was at that time far from the city center, it wasn't a success. And so it was made a so-called native township back in 1912. It was established just before the Land Act in 1913, which meant that black people could buy freehold land, and that was later taken away under the apartheid government in 1948. But that's how the township started. In terms of location, it's just so remarkable, again, going back to that photo, if you could pop that up, thanks, Candace, that it is located next to Sandton, which I think most of you know is the so-called richest square mile in Africa. And that photo, you can see it. You can see the Leonardo, building there, and then you see like the abject poverty in the foreground. And that's so unique. The richest square mile in Africa and one of the poorest townships in the country. Some of the other flagship townships like Soweto have attracted a lot more resources and infrastructure. Alex remains one of the poorest townships, yet next to the richest square mile in Africa. And that richest square mile has not affected Alex at all. There's no sense in which it has improved the state of affairs in Alex. So just really interesting juxtaposition of the location of Alex. Population-wise, figures vary tremendously, but community leaders would put the population within Alex at 800,000 people in an 8 square kilometer piece of land. So just think about those numbers. So that's 100,000 people per 1 square kilometer, right? It's immensely, highly densely populated, like equivalent to sky-rise metropolis cities in the world. So 800,000 people, guys, in 8 square kilometers. I mean, that's such a density of human beings. And living in Alex based on an infrastructure that was originally designed for 70,000 people. So 10 times the amount of people living on an infrastructure that was made for 10 times less. It's known to be, as a township, to be the biggest recipient of immigration in the country. So that's both local immigration, so from rural areas. A lot of people who immigrate from rural areas end up in Alex and from Southern Africa. And the reason is because of its location to the business areas of Sandton and Rosebank, and just unique to the way Alex operates. It has its own system of leadership and land ownership and operations. But it is the easiest place where you can erect a roof over your head and have access to water and at least electricity somewhere. It is the easiest place, and so that's why it has the highest recipient of immigration, and that's why it continues to grow. And it's also why it's the most diverse township, known to be the most diverse township in our country for that reason. In terms of churches in Alex, hard to tell, but some of this information I've actually gotten from a presentation Sinclaire did years back, when we were doing JBC in Alex. And his quote is hundreds, if not thousands, of churches, right? So lots, but mostly African traditional religion type of churches, ZCC, etc., or kind of neo-Pentecostal churches that are often just more of a front for other kinds of activity. Our work over the past 2 years at Johannesburg Bible College, as well as more recently when Pastors Ndaba and Zwei were invited by Muziwetu to minister to the staff at Rays of Hope in Alex, and just unpacked so much there. So the work of the college plus the work of our pastors at Rays of Hope has just opened our eyes to this reality of the need for a biblically based, gospel-centered ministry in Alex. Right, we've just seen the need. I mean, at JBC, the students coming through, I would love for you to hear testimonies of that. And just, by the way, 6th of December is an open invitation for anyone to come to the graduation at JBC. You'll hear more about that. I'm not going to talk a lot tonight about the ministry. You'll hear more about it in weeks to come. But if you could hear the stories, I've heard them now 2 years running. Vianney was there and Roy was there this year and a few others. It's just remarkable of the unlearning that has to take place. And they don't often have churches to go back to. Not all of them are pastors. Some of them are just Bible teachers. And so there's this immense need for this kind of work in Alex. So that's the strategic motivation here. And I think it's just helpful to think about the fact that Rosebank, in its 117 years, has planted or been involved in the planting of or revitalization of 8 different churches in its history. And this will be the first one in a black area. So it's significant that we are putting our attention here at this time. Now, that's the strategic motivation, but this whole idea didn't arise out of a strategic planning session and going, hey, here's a need. I mean, that would have been fun, I think. But, it's not like we had the session, let's go find a guy. All of the work with Rays of Hope and JBC and seeing the need, it was all happening. All this was happening in the background, and then along came, dun dun dun, Bafana Shabalala. He's sitting there at the back there, everyone. Bafana, you want to wave to everybody sitting over there? So all of this was going on, this thinking is happening, but then along comes Bafana. So Bafana says, okay, I'm going to talk about you now, you and your wife, but it's going to be all good. So some basic stats. Hopefully you're just prepared for this meeting and you read that bio that we put together. But just to summarize some basic stats for you, 53 years old. Bafana, you'll be pleased to know that most people put your age at like in the early 40s. So kudos to you. 53 years old, been married to Sibongile, his wife, who's also here, I think. I did see her earlier. There she is. Been married for 22 years, have 3 teenage daughters, and you would have seen in Bafana's bio story there that he's been a Christian for 28 years, same amount of time Shelley's been working at Rosebank Union Church. So been a Christian for a long time. In terms of qualifications, just distilling from that bio as well, he has actually a diploma in bookkeeping from Damlin, so we're upping engineers but also finance people. Has a bachelor's in theology that he attained in 2014 from Christ Seminary, and is finishing his honours degree as we speak, right, this year, which just, by the way, Pastor Zwei also has just finished his right now as well. And so that's in terms of qualifications. He, as you heard in the video as well in the service, upon converting to Christ, became immediately involved in ministry in Davidton Township on the East Rand. You would have heard the story about the trains. I was just so amazed about the ministry on the trains, while working in marketing and logistics at first TiVo and then Unilever. 2003, moved to Lombardy East, so that's just on the border of Alexandra. Started ministering at Tabernacle Baptist Church, a church planted by an American Baptist missionary, and was made pastor of that church in 2009. And the missionary returned back to the United States, and so for 6 years was pastor of that church in Lombardy East. And interesting is, at that time, it was bivocational, as a lot of Bafana's life has been jobs all over to support ministry. And so he served as a receptionist secretary at the International Mission Board offices in Edenvale, which is where I met my wife. So she, that's the Southern Baptists who, their local, their missions outreach in Southern Africa, their offices are in Edenvale. I won't go into the story of how we met, but actually he was at receptionist at the time that Kristen was there. I might have popped into the IMB offices for work-related purposes from time to time and seen Bafana. I actually do have that image in my mind of Bafana sitting there at that desk. So he held that job just while he was pastoring the church in Tabernacle. And pretty much started in ministry in Alex at the same time as moving to Lombardy East. Is the chaplain of Alex FM. So has his own show, and that's been since 2003. And so been ministering in Alex for 20 years. So I think that's substantial, and still you can find him on the radio of Alex FM. Then in 2016 to 2018, so after the building that the Tabernacle Baptist was meeting in was no longer available, the church closed. And so 2016 to 2018, he worked as a pastor at Randburg Baptist Church for the afternoon congregation. And then in 2019, just before COVID, went back to ministry in Alex and started Lesedi Church, which means light, which is a lovely name for a church, especially if it's going to connect with Rays of Hope. So Lesedi Church, just in his garage, and currently still there are people meeting there on Sunday mornings. And then at that time also started working at Christian book discounters, and that's how he ended up in our bookshop over here. So that's how we first got to meet him, but really got to know Bafana through his work at JBC. I mean, I've shared this story, but Nat will be preaching here in a few weeks' time, and you can ask him the story. But when he went for reference checks, obviously Nat was one that we went to as an employer, and his words were the JBC campus in Alexandra would not happen without Bafana. He came on board initially to be a recruiter because of his vast networks within Alex, having ministered there for 20 years. And so without him, there wouldn't have been as much recruiting as we had. Was quickly seen as a leader amongst the pastors there, and so hence was taken on board as a staff, as a lecturer, as one who does student counseling, and as one Nat says, whenever there's issues like Oaks are late or something, and he gets Bafana to be bad cop and tell the guys what to do, and apparently they listen. So that's how we really got to know him. I work closely with Nat Schluter and Helen at JBC. It's just a project that we're so fond of, and so their recommendation means a lot. Shelley Seiler lectures there as well, as you heard on Sunday, and so she's got to know Bafana. A lot of our pastors in Darba and Swai have got to know him as well over the past few years. As I mentioned as well 2 Sundays ago, that we got to see his passion for township ministry when Rosebank just ended up hosting the conferences for organizations that he started, the Academy of Theology, equipping pastors for township ministry around the country. So over 400 pastors came from around the country, were in this Jerusalem hall and didn't even fit because there were so many that came. T4R, Together for Evangel, the Gospel, also another connection of pastors in townships who are focused on being biblically faithful and gospel-centered, doing training, Gauteng Alliance, etc. And so needless to say, on the one hand, with this thing going on in the background about assignment Alex and the need, and seeing JBC, the need, and Rays of Hope, and then meeting Bafana, when he approached me to say, hey, how about looking at a ministry in Alex? Needless to say, we're interested. So let's talk, for sure. And so maybe just adding to that, so just trying to paint a picture for you of dots that start to form a picture. I mean, added to that, we, just on a really pragmatic note, but we in April said farewell to Dave Marburg, our worship pastor, and immediately the question was, are we going to replace Dave as a worship pastor? And I think the consensus sense from all of us was, let's not do that too quickly. Let's just keep that seat. And it's not like we have an official number of seats, but budget-wise, etc. Let's just leave that open. Let's just wait and see. Maybe God is going to do something different. That was just a sense that we had. And so when this came along, there was just another part of the puzzle that we saw coming together. And so that started to now take shape into, okay, what could this look like? And so the possibility of planting a church in Alex from the beginning, from the very beginning, our approach has been strongly about the idea of an authentic, local church community, biblically based, gospel-centered, one that will carry its own identity, so distinct from Rosebank in identity. I'll explain that. So not like a sort of campus type of church that will hopefully become autonomous one day, connected either with a denomination or Rosebank as a partner. There's details that we still need to figure out, but the vision behind it is an approach that I call a fully integrated approach. So what we could have done is, here's Bafana, he's passionate, he's experienced. For Alex, we're like, hey, we like Alex, and just supported him as a missionary. That would have been really easy. We wouldn't have needed Joel's approval to do that. We could have just done that. But just from the very beginning, felt that we really wanted to do this, the fully integrated approach. So call Bafana onto our team as a pastor to help shape this thing from within the pastoral team under the oversight of the elder team. And when we start something, that it's fully, authentically local and with all of the support of Rosebank. And I think a couple of reasons for that approach. So number one, the fully integrated approach, it mitigates against what has been some very unhelpful narratives in the past of missions works in townships being outsourced, where more resourced churches would see a need in a poor area and just kind of send money or send somebody, and it's a very hands-off approach, and it's easy, it's clean, you get to pat yourselves on the back perhaps about having done something significant, but actually don't have to get involved in the work. And that ends up with these works not being really successful. And I think just, again, historically was the idea of a missions church or Sendenkirk, and so some of these narratives we really felt we wanted to do something different here. So the fully integrated approach. Other churches have tried planting in Alex, but with the campus kind of model. So taking a major suburban church and, having a just a facility, maybe beaming in a sermon or something like that. And that approach hasn't worked. And I just want to read you a little quote from this document that Sinclaire put together back in the day that I think is quite important to see how Alex works. And so let me just read it for you. So he says, what you have is you have a community that is very cynical, but knows how to use while it's being used. So the idea is a lot of company, let me just carry on reading. Because it's so shockingly poor, everyone with any heart or means in Joburg has tried to do something in Alex, from big businesses, small businesses with big dreams, to mega churches. And he mentions a couple, foreign churches. Everyone has tried, and as Alex residents say, everyone's tried to make a name for themselves by solving a problem in Alex. So Alexandrians have seen it all, the big media launches, big promises that never materialized. And so there is a cynicism there, but a community that knows how to use while it is being used. And so again, just reinforcing the need for something that's just fully, authentically local and indigenous, not a kind of parachute drop idea. Secondly, I think just reason for the fully integrated approach, it ensures that the new church is given the administrative support and theological guidance required in order for it to be well established. I mean, if you add the resources of Rosebank, our admin people here, who are the best, who are able to, already some of them are so excited to be involved in this project. You give the admin resources plus like the pastoral team and the elders. So, Pastor Ndaba's got a lot to add to this conversation and to this church planting idea, Pastor Zwai as well. And so you just are able, with fully integrated, instead of just sending someone and washing your hands, you're able to make sure it's got the support it needs to be sustainable. And that's also why perhaps some other church plants have failed. Number 3 is there's just adequate accountability and governance during the planting phase. And so to really make a difference here in Alex, just to step back in our minds, what we see is a biblically based, gospel-centered church. To have that, you need a church planter, pastor who has the passion for township ministry, who has the experience, who has the calling, as well as the pastoral gifting and character required. And that person needs to be supported. And so we have that person, we believe, sitting over there, Bafana, and we have the support sitting here at the church. And Bafana, you can just close your ears now. I'm going to talk nicely about you, but it might add too much pressure to you. But I just wonder, like part of me is just, apart from all of the strategy and stuff, is to just, I wonder what this guy can do if we just support him and just let him loose. I really believe that. And for 50-something, hasn't been ministering for 50-something years, but has been ministering for 20, 30 years and never with support, always scrambling and bits and pieces. I just wonder what's possible if we just come around him and support him. So God willing, Easter 2024 may be the start of a church service in Alex. So what we're calling you to do tonight, and I'll take some questions. What we're calling you to do, though, is not necessarily adopting the idea of a church plant, although that is why we are calling Bafana. We are putting before you to agree to the calling of an outreach pastor here at Rosebank, Bafana Shabalala. I'll talk you through his job description here, just basics, but primarily will be involved with evangelistic outreach and church planting in Alex, obviously. So research, strategic planning, developing a core leadership team, a core planting group, evangelism and pastoral visitation to prospective members, prayer meetings with prospective people, so a lot to do on that level. Then also leadership and support for township ministry in South Africa. We love what's happening with T4I and the Academy of Theology, so we want to support that, as well as lecturing at JBC. You'll still be doing that for 2 weeks, except not paid by JBC anymore, now paid by Rosebank, but we're also the ones that support JBC. And continue with the T4R, Gauteng Alliance, etc. Some pastoral responsibilities at Rosebank, so perhaps involved in services from time to time, and then participation within our pastor, elder, and ministry teams. So we believe through the core process, as Dave gave some feedback as well a couple of weekends ago, we believe he has, as far as we can tell, but with a lot on the table, the calling for this, the character required for it, the competency shown through experience, many, many years of experience in Alex, as well as his training. And so that's the vote that we are putting before you. But before we get there, perhaps we can take some questions if there are any. Yes, Anthony. Maybe just wait for the mic so online people can hear.
Thanks. Could you describe to us just briefly how the relationship and the energies will work together between this new pastoral position and Rays of Hope?
So Rays of Hope, what we would ask from them is mainly just facilities. So currently the hope is that this church could be based at the JBC campus in Alex, which is a Rays of Hope campus. And so that's, Rays of Hope are not, doing any part of the church planting, but coming alongside just as a partner in terms of facility. Just like with the JBC, they're just providing the facilities, but there is, of course, a mutually beneficial relationship between the two. Mainly from Rays of Hope's side, it's facilities. Yeah. I would imagine, though, Anthony, that things like a lot of the pastoral care that we've had to do this year at Rays of Hope with Ndaba and Zwei, that now you've got someone in-house, that may be a benefit to Rays of Hope, but haven't thought through that level of detail yet. Bafana, is that you asking a question?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, no.
It's Bafana's half-brother. I just have a question. So if you think about Rosebank as a church, right? It's been around for over, 100 years? And then if you think about what you're trying to do in Alex, it's about money at the end of the day, because this church, as well managed as it is resourced by its members. So you might start Alex for a while, but ultimately it has to become similar to what Rosebank has become. So how does that fit into your picture? Or have you guys thought about that?
Yeah.
Or what happens?
Thank you. Yes, and Ndaba just made a good point. I think, Bafana, actually you should recuse yourself at this point, because guys might have some serious questions about yourself. So maybe you and Sibongile hang out at Sisonke Cafe for a little bit. Hopefully nothing bad, but I think just it is better. Thanks, Ndaba. So financially, there we have, you'll see in the budget presentation later, some startup costs for retrofitting a facility. But mainly it's carrying Bafana's salary cost. And I think this is an important question, so thank you. One of the hypothetical scenarios, and we hope that this doesn't happen, but let's say, for example, the church plant never works for whatever reason, what happens then? The point is, Bafana is our pastor at Rosebank Union Church, and he will be until such time as it maybe becomes an autonomous local church and completely moves away. He's a pastor here and will serve here for however long it takes to establish a work there. And so we are setting ourselves for a permanent employment contract with no idea as to the timeline for when this might be autonomous or exactly what arrangement might be made going forward. From our side, though, our financial commitment is therefore to him, and potentially for longer. Let's say it does become an autonomous local church in the sense that it's got its own constitution, it's got its own constituted membership, it's got its own leadership, but maybe financially is not able to be self-sufficient. We're prepared to still be in this for the long term. But I think the main point is that we're hiring him and supporting him as a pastor, as a salaried pastor, and that is on a permanent contract basis. And if worst comes to worst, he's going to be a pastor here at Rosebank. So there's some, should be some comfort for him there. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you. Then if you could head to vote number 4 on your QR codes here and submit the vote. If you could just put up your hands for those who want to fill out the vote, and someone can get Bafana back as well. Guys, just a reminder to please make sure you click submit. If you've just clicked your vote and not submit, then it hasn't been recorded. So make sure you scroll all the way up on your phone and you've hit the submit. You should see something, go back to the BGM landing page, then you know you're done.
I think we're all done. Can we move on? Thanks, Candice. Sorry. Right, I think we can get started on the next portion of the meeting, and that's to look at the budget for 2024. I could cut this short by just asking you if you've all read what's on the web page before the meeting, and if you've all read it, then I can sit down and we can move on. Is that okay? No, okay. So you can see there the agenda. So what we're going to do is just firstly cover the 23 results for 23, or the forecast to the end of December. Then we'll look at the budget for 2024, have a look at the capital expenditure, and then we'll take a vote on it. Okay? Okay, so the forecast results for 2023, so essentially what these are the actual results to September, and then the budgeted figures for October, November, December, and then we've tweaked those budgeted figures for, we know obviously the October results, but these things had to be out a bit earlier than that. So the 2023 forecast is on the left-hand column there, and then the comparative to that is the 2022 actuals. So you could just have a look at that. But just a couple of comments as far as those results are concerned. You'll see that our offerings have gone up from 20.5 million to 22.5 million, which represents about a 9.5% increase. And that was really encouraging. If you think the inflation is, 6-7% or whatever, it means there's some real growth in terms of some of the offerings that have come in. So thank you to the many, many people that contribute to the church over the year, not just the people that give the larger amounts, for there are some of those, but also the people that give the regular amounts on each and every single month. In terms of our expenses, the two big items that we can talk about here is the personnel costs, and the personnel costs are certainly much lower than what we budgeted for, and that is really because people like Dave Meyerberg left, and there were a couple other resignations, and it took a few months to replace those people. So we had a bit of a savings in salary costs throughout the year, which was quite nice from the point of view that we were always a bit worried that maybe the budgeted expenses from 2023 might be quite difficult to meet from this, if I go back to this time last year. The other thing just to mention is our generator costs. So the repairs and maintenance to the generator and the diesel we've had to buy through the load shedding that we've had over the last year have been quite astronomical. And so in fact, up until, the forecast figure, if one takes up to September and then forecast through to the end of December, was going to be 645,000. That's what it's cost us to run the generators. So that was quite a large item. There was some savings around security. We moved some security costs out to the hospitality company, but don't worry too much about that. But at the end of the day, our expenses went up by about 10%, which I think, again, is quite commendable in terms of where we've been and what we had planned to do. So what we're seeing is we'll see a small surplus, 439,000. I think it might be a little bit bigger if I look at the October results. But be that as it may, it's very encouraging that we've got to a situation where we've got a surplus compared to the deficit that we had last year. Right, so let's move on to the 2024 budget. And before I put the figures up on the board, I think it's important just for people to understand where we're coming from and the assumptions that we made in preparing that budget. So thank you. I'm assuming, we all assumed that we were going to get a 75% vote for Bafana. So it does include, the personnel costs will include a salary for him or remuneration for him. We budgeted for a 6% increase in salaries across the board for the existing staff. I think it's important to note that our headcount from 23 to 24 is slightly down. In fact, it's the lowest it's been since Richard arrived in 2020. So it's not that we are increasing headcount, but the headcount is down a bit. The next item on the you'll see expenses just now, missions and outreach. So our missionary support, where we give our staff a 6% increase, we give the missionary support a 6% increase. So that will also be part of that. Our missionary general expenses that we'll have, and it's not a particularly big figure, but it's increased nominally for 2024. You will know from this time last year, James Wetton joined the Kingsmead Church, and we supported him from a pastoral point of view, and that support ceases at the end of December as we agreed. So that obviously is a reduction in the costs in the outreach side. And then the two big items is the campus outreach of 400,000 and the Johannesburg JBC Alex Outreach of 300,000. And I'll talk a bit more about those a bit later as we get to that. So the ministries that we have is worship, discipleship, next gen, care, counseling and missions. And we've just factored in a 7.5% increase for that for 2024. Administration, which includes things like staff training, education, insurance, audit fees, etc., etc., etc. You can look at those if you want to. Again, a 7.5% general increase across the board. But we've also included an admin-related costs for the church plant in Alex, or should I say assignment Alex. I think that's the more correct term. But so that's also in the budget for 2024. As far as the campus is concerned, budget again, we're increasing across the board 7.5%. There's obviously an increase in the cost of utilities in terms of electricity, water, which I've mentioned. And I come to another figure just now about that. Maintenance costs to be managed. We do look at that. We've had obviously during the COVID period, we put an absolute freeze on a lot of the maintenance costs, and so some of those costs have escalated a bit over the last couple of years, and we're hoping we can maintain that. Again, we're including some campus-related costs for the church in Alex when that comes about. In terms of our capital expenditure, CapEx, we do not budget for anything related to Project Refresh. For those that have been around for a while, you know that's a large aspect of the church to, for example, like this hall, to upgrade it and refresh it, as it were. Those costs are not in the budget. The costs that you'll see here are only the computer and IT-related costs that we might have. So the next one item, just to talk about the income from the use of the church facilities. You'll know that is housed in RUC Hospitality Pty Limited. I'm not going to go through the reasons for that, but it's a separate entity, and where we do receive rentals or whatever full use of the church facilities, that gets pushed into the hospitality company. So we're expecting an anticipated surplus on the use of that of about 800,000 Rand, and we hope that 2024 will be a repeat of that. So we will use, in fact we're going to be doing it now for a large capital item that we are about to purchase. We use the profits from the hospitality company to actually use for Project Refresh. So that's where those costs will be housed, not housed, but they'll be funded from the profits that we make from hospitality company. Okay, so let's get on to the actual budget itself. So you'll see there's a few columns there. The very far column is the 2022 actuals, and then the 2023 forecast, and then 2024 budget, and then the percentage increases for each one. So you'll see, for example, well, perhaps you would like to just digest that for a minute. You'll see basically we're looking at an expense budget of 25 million. I wish it was 25,000. I mean, at the end of the day, any church is an expense-driven budget, and you just hope and pray that God provides the income for you to meet those expenses. And that's, I guess, we're no different from any other organization such as ours. So you could just see that, and I'll just move on to the next. In fact, don't go to the next slide, leave that on, and I'll just talk through these. So the personnel costs, as you will see, and the reason we put, we didn't put it up here, but the budget for the personnel costs, the budget now for 2023 was 15.2 million. Compare that, the forecast is 40 million. That's the difference in what I spoke about earlier with staff changes and movements and so on. So if we're going from 15.2 budget last year with a slightly down head count, we're going to 16 million. So if you look at a 15.5% increase, you're probably saying, Yaks, what's happening here? All right, but just bear in mind that our staff head count will be slightly lower, but we haven't budgeted for obviously someone leaving and then for 3 months for a new person to get appointed. So those are the cost savings we had in 2023. Does that make sense? Okay, all right. So the forecast 2023 generator and diesel costs, like I mentioned, is 645,000. What we've included in there on the campus is a budget for diesel and generator repairs and maintenance, etc., of 693,000. Now, obviously, we hope that load shedding is going to not be a thing of the past, but certainly not get to stages 5, 6, 7, and will remain at stages 1 and 2, whatever it is. And that's probably, hopefully, going to be quite a big saving. But when we budgeted for 23, we were well under budget. Well over budget in terms of the actual cost. So we don't want to be caught short again. So that's the budget that we've got on that. Clearly, there's a process at the moment to see how we can address these energy costs. I know Roy's been working quite hard with a group of people to see if we can get solar in and all of that sort of stuff, but it's going to take time, and there's obviously going to be a significant cost factor attached to that as well. But if you think of 693,000, you multiply that by 3, you're close to 2 million, and if it gets 2 million to put in solar panels, well then it's going to pay itself off in 3 years. So we'll see how that goes as we go through. Johannesburg Bible College, this year it's been funded 100%. The church itself has not had to fund any of it. For those that will remember the 23 budget, we put in a 300,000 rand provision because at the end of the day we are actually the bank of last resort for JBC. But what they've managed to do is source other funding from other churches and other sources, and also there's a number of people in this church that will support specific students there, and they'll pay those students' cost, and that all helps. And so we've been very grateful for that patron support and for the support, direct giving as well from people from this church and others, that we haven't had to actually put any cash into JBC this year, and we're hoping the same thing is going to continue into next year. Just go on to the next slide, please, Candice. So the other thing we haven't got in the budget is we've got no budget for support of Rays of Hope. It's been absolutely fantastic 3 or 4 years for them, since COVID, in fact, and they really have been able to row their own boat, as it were. But I think that they're finding things a little bit more tight at the moment. And although we're not hitting the panic button at the moment, and we're confident that, or the board, in fact, from what I understand, the board of Rays of Hope is confident that they will be able to continue to provide or get the funds that they need. But just so that you know that we haven't put any cost in for Rays of Hope, and if they do need help, then we might just have to step in. I'm not saying that's a definite thing, but just so that you're aware of that. So I want to open up to questions on the expense budget. Are there any around? Sorry, you can just wait for the mic.
Yeah, thank you. Just a question. There's been a fair amount of mention regarding the operating expense of the generator. Does the generator feed through to Rosehaven, and are we recovering, RUC recovering costs for operation and maintenance?
I'm pretty certain it doesn't go to Rosehaven. Is that right? Does it? No, they've got their own generator.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. There's a question over there, Seb. I'm hoping the engineers are asking the questions and not the accountants. No, Dave, you can't ask. Sorry.
Just a question. So does the church have its own giving? Does the church give to a community per se? Or I suppose that circles back to why does the church not give money to Rays of Hope? Is it just like completely separate?
No, not at all. So if you go back to prior to March 2020, we used to support them 35,000 rand a month, 420,000 a year. And obviously, if they had a need, then we would look very carefully at actually supporting them. I'm not sure whether your question was a bit wider than that. Then Candice, can you just go back to that budget? So you see missions and outreach, and no one's asked, but we used to have those as 2 separate items, missions and outreach, but we've lumped them together. So missions and outreach is everything that the church does outside of the church. All right, so that's the support of JBC campus outreach, as well as our missionaries. Now, it's interesting to note that you've got 3.5 million there on a budget of 25 million. Now, so that's 12-15%. I haven't worked that out exactly. So that's, if you like, the church's offerings to people outside. Does that answer your question? Is that what you're wanting to know? Okay. I think Dave had a question here, Seb. So you always ask the difficult ones. It's fine, Dave.
Yeah, just a comment from long ago is, as the council, we used to look at the numbers from Rays of Hope, because you've often got members of Rosebank actually contributing into the into the Rays of Hope thing, and we actually used to look at what were members' contributions and companies associated with members, and then outside support. So we actually used to have those numbers. I don't know what's happened in the last 5 years, but just a comment of where the support sometimes comes from. Then just my question is, if you look at your budget for 2023, the revenue didn't match budget. Now, obviously, you had pastors leaving, and so the expenses were down. Can you just comment on the 2023 budget? And I see it's also now up to 2024. I mean, we didn't get 1.8 million in the budget for last year, and now you've got it up to 2.5. Can you just comment on that and the FinCom's view on that?
So can I answer that just now when I
sure.
talk about the income side? So I'm just really talking about the expenses for the time being. But can I just comment on Rays of Hope? Sandy sits on the FinCom. She meets with us and she sends us the detailed financial statements of that. We only have a kind of a oversight of that. We don't really have any control of that, but it's just nice to know where they're going and what they've got and so on. So, as I say, to the extent that we need to start assisting them financially, then we would look very carefully at doing that. We don't have those details because often we don't know which members have contributed. And I think that, and I don't know because I only became treasurer in 2020 when the whole thing changed in terms of Rays of Hope. I think they get significant amount of income from non-RUC members, as far as I'm aware, or other businesses like that. So I don't know. You know, it's difficult to say that. You know, if you were to give to Rays of Hope, how do I know that that's you? You know, you might just put down donation. I don't know whether that helps you, Dave. Just hang on. So just let Dave finish. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Kuna, you want to say?
Yeah, Rays of Hope used to be a ministry of Rosebank Union, and Rays of Hope is an independent NGO. So before, people from Rosebank Union could deposit money and say, this is for Rays of Hope. People can still do that.
Of
and
course.
you would just pass it on to them.
Of course.
But before, it was a ministry of our church.
Yeah.
Now it's an NGO, so we don't get to, it doesn't work that way anymore. It used to, but it doesn't anymore.
Yeah. Okay, Dave? Yeah.
So it's not changed in legal entity.
Sure.
In the last 10 years.
Yeah, Dave, I don't want to digress onto Rays of Hope. All right, I understand what your question is. The short answer is no, we don't get that information. All right. Any other questions? There's one more question there, sorry.
Hi, Roy. Could I just ask, I mean, if one had to donate, obviously we talk about tithes and we talk about missions. So if one had to designate a donation to missions, do we know where that money goes? That goes to foreign missions, or is there any distinction?
I think it would depend on what you state when you give the donation. If you wanted to go to foreign missions, but I mean, I suppose really the budget is in there already. We could credit that to income, or we could credit it against that cost of missions. So it's 6 or 1.5 dozen other, if you like. But I mean, we do get people that will say a designated offering for missions, and that's fine. So we'll take it to the missions account, as it were.
Thanks.
All right. So it's the same thing. I mean, if you put a donation into the RUC's books for either Rays of Hope or JBC or Campus Outreach, that designated fund would go to the where you wanted it to go to. All right. Okay. So just in terms of matching the income and expenses. So if I can get another 2. All right, so coming back to what I hope I'm going to answer your question, Dave. So it's interesting to note, so what we're doing is we're budgeting for a 10.4% increase in offerings for 2024. And on that basis, we would then break even, as it were. We'd have a very small surplus or break even. I think people might be, if you can show the next slide. So the regular monthly income, obviously for this year, these are some of the challenges in 2024, needs to be at 2.1 million for us to get to 25 million. I guess no rocket science for that. However, if you look at the 23 forecast, all right, against the 22 actual, and I said that to you earlier on, there was a 9.5% increase. So to go from a 9.5% increase to a 24.4% is not as challenging as it was this time last year when we were looking at a much bigger percentage. So I don't think we're uncomfortable that, Roy alluded to the number of people that have joined the church, and that sort of multiplier effect, you just get another 50 or 60 people that are giving whatever, a few thousand rand a month over the course of the year. It has quite a big impact on that. So I think I'm probably right in saying that FinCom and EGB are a bit more comfortable with this budget than maybe we were last year. Okay. So that's a challenge, and obviously, we just trust God that He will continue to provide for the regular income as the year progresses. Campus costs, we've mentioned about the utility costs. Those certainly are a concern, so that's something just to bear in mind for our key challenges. And then obviously we've got unbudgeted commitments. If JBC does not get the required income and we have to become the reserve bank, as it were, we would need to find that funds. All right. As I've said to you, the last 2 years we haven't had to put any money in as such, cash from the church coffers, which is we're very grateful for, but it's something we need to just bear in mind. And then I've spoken a little bit about Rays of Hope, if that eventuality does come through. So capital expenditure, as I mentioned, Project Refresh will only be funded out of specific donations, and obviously surplus from the use of the facilities, and then CapEx is really for our computer rotation and IT costs. That's what's in the budget, the 200,000 there. All right. Maybe I can just stop there and see if there's any questions around that. Dave, have I answered your question? Are you okay? All right. There's a question here. Thanks, Seb. You get fit for rugby.
It's not enough. Yeah, just looking at your income compared to your expenses, and as you said, we're an expense-based business. What happens if we don't get the income? Because you've taken it very close to the line.
We pray.
Sure.
Look, that can sound a bit flippant, and I don't. I'm confident that we will get that income. I mean, I think that the members of the church have always stepped up to the party when we've called for funds, and I think that the fact that we've been around for 117 years, and more importantly, the fact that we've come through these last 4 years, is really testament of God's faithfulness towards us. So, I've said it before. I think we kind of have got faith on the one side and pragmatic on the other, and you need to balance the two out. And so, yeah. But thank you. Another question? Did I answer it? Sorry, or not really? Okay, thank you.
Sorry, just on a broader note on what the previous question was. South Africa is obviously going through a massive demographic change, right? So if you look at, for example, the taxes, very small portion of our country, very small number of people pay towards the taxes. And those people, most of whom are white, obviously, are either leaving, dying, or the children are leaving the country. So in the long run, say 20 years from now, what is it going to look like in terms of this entity? Because I would say that this church is almost a microcosm of how our tax revenue is generated.
I don't know. I'm not going to be here in 20 years' time, man.
Well, okay, but hold on. It's
Sorry.
only 1/5 of the time that the church has been around, so
Yeah.
something that has to be thought about.
Look, I mean, we're not unaware of the economic hardships within the country, all right? And again, I emphasize, we're looking for a 10% increase or 10.5% increase in the income over 2023 to get us through 2024. If we've got a few more people that join the church and start to tithe and start to contribute, I don't think it's totally unattainable. All right. I mean, I think there's also, we build into the budget certain items which are discretionary. So, for example, we put into the budget a 1-month bonus for staff, okay, which gets paid in December. Now, if the cash isn't there, we don't pay it. So you can take whatever the 16 million, divide that by 12, not quite, but that's a buffer, if you like. All right. Sorry. Sorry? Oh, okay. Oh. I thought it was up there.
Online question from Val. November has always been a time of Thanksgiving offerings, but I have not heard any mention of this. Is that still happening?
It is, yes, and it will be announced in due course. Yeah. 26th of November. Yeah. That's when the Thanksgiving offering will be given. And that money will be allocated to JBC? And yeah. From campus outreach and JBC. I didn't want to steal anyone's thunder when they announced that, so sorry. Okay, anything else? Yes, Rocky. And then...
Thanks, Bruce. Just on, I don't know if you're going to delve into Project Refresh. I'm just interested here, we were donating into Project Refresh. Is it a separate fund that sits there that's ring-fenced? And what is it looking like at the moment?
Can I talk about... Okay, so Project Refresh by the end of this year will have 0 in it because we're in the process of buying a new mixer console, not sound desk. I'm told I can't use the word sound desk. Okay, so that'll be coming in, and effectively that's going to flatten the fund itself. Right, we received also a specific donation towards that as well. So, and then the profits from hospitality will fund the balance of that. Right, but I think I'll leave that for Richard to talk about just now. Okay, and there was a question, yeah.
It's not really so much a finance question, but I mean, I think to the previous point from the back, right, around, I think it's actually a point of diversification of income, right, as an organization, right? So, church in a tithing context and a giving context, right? And I think that it's worthwhile, and I don't know where these I'm one of your newest members, right? So I don't know where these conversations happen, but I think, practically for a larger, well-resourced church, in our context, if you look at some of the trends globally, then a lot of churches are finding the ways to leverage the resources and the things that they do to a context of outside of their community, right? And that generates income, right? That could look like courses, that could look like teaching, that could look like, and lots of things, and the venue would be an example of that, So I think it's a worthwhile conversation to have in whatever forum it has, to say, well, what's happening globally from a diversification of income strategy within a church context, like globally, and is there any way to learn from that, right? To be able to, on a forward-looking basis, say, does it make sense to find ways to either supplement or increase income in more than just a tithe and offering basis?
I think that's a good suggestion. We can look at that. I mean, obviously, you've seen the figures there in terms of the leasing out of the halls and the use of church facilities. That brings in, hopefully, it's going to be $1 million next year. Yeah, okay. Maybe we could chat afterwards. I don't know whether you've got any specific ideas as far as that's concerned, but yeah, okay. All right. Another question from the engineer.
Sorry, just one more question. I suppose it's just a fact of our crazy Gini coefficient in our country, but I wonder, do we really need a R1 million sound desk when we have people 5 k's away who can't feed themselves. I'm just wondering, do we need that much investment in the building, in all these things that work so well for us? I mean, I'm saying that from not knowing exactly what's happening with the sound, but I'm wondering, when we're surrounded by such need, are there other ways we could use our funds?
I have an answer, but
look, the reality with the sound desk is, I'm going to talk to it when you talk refresh. I mean, that sound desk is only running because Justin lays hands on it every single Sunday. And when he goes to Philippines, it's not going to work. So I kid you not, there have been Sundays when we've appeared and full at the back there, that thing doesn't work. We don't have a service on a Sunday. That isn't a luxury. It's literally, it's like a generator that is needed to run the church. We've needed to replace the desk. It's finished. It's kaput. And so, it's not a luxury. And I mean, if you think about our Sunday service being the core of what draws people to the church, produces income and offerings that then gets sent outwards. If you just stop doing all ministry, you won't have any money to spend outwards. So that's just purely a must spend at this point. So,
thanks, Richard. Okay. Can we move on? I think I'm over my 15 minutes. You guys are asking far too many questions. Maybe we should have it in the church in future. All right, so just in terms of the next slide, please. The Finance Committee. Johan Stradum has been on FinCom, I think, since 1962. I'm not sure how long. I don't think you even remember when you first came on, but he's been on for a long, long time. So basically, he's going to go on sabbatical. So he's stepping off finance, the Finance Committee. Shelley, as you all know, is retiring at the end of this year, so she's also stepping off. And in her place, in terms of the link into the church, we welcome Roseanne Cloak. So she's going to join, has been joining us for the last few meetings. And I think we will be looking to appoint another person to replace Johan. We will announce that in due course. But I really just want to say thank you to the FinCom committee. Helen, Richard Jabba, Richard Callahan, and Roy, as well as Moira and Sandy, who also attend. It's really a great group of people. There's no prisoners. If things need to be said, they say it. And it runs smoothly, and it's a really great committee. So I want to thank them all for their efforts in the last year or so. And so I think just really to end off, I think the prayers that we would cherish as far as the church is concerned, I think just to say thank you that he's supplied our needs for 2023. Maybe he hasn't given us the income, but he's reduced our expenses, so we're grateful for that. We need to continue to pray that he would provide for our financial needs going forward into 2024. Pray for the launch of the Alex Church plant, which take place in the coming year. We do pray also, believe it or not, for the finances of the members of the church, because obviously if the businesses around us are doing poorly, then obviously that affects our income. So we do pray for the finances of everyone around, and we continue to pray for good stewardship and for wisdom in terms of allocating the funds. So now it comes time for you to vote. So I think it's vote number 5, is it? Is that right?
All right, well, while if you're still voting, that's fine. I'm just going to kick off with just reflections on the year. If you were around at the AGM beginning of the year, you will have heard me say that there's no big changes coming this year, no big new things coming. That was true then. We did not know then that Bafana would enter the horizon and the picture. But the point was true, that we really saw ahead of us a year, we call it like a year of consolidation. So just after a lot of changes over many years, just the need to consolidate those changes and build on the consistency that we had developed in the post-COVID year 2022. And I think that consistency and consolidation has really paid off. And so I just want to give you a few little glimpses and snapshots of high-level items for the year. Just to note, as Roy mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, this meeting is about next year, and next year's AGM, we do full ministry report for this year. And so I'm not going to do, by any stretch, full ministry report, but just some high-level items that might just give you an indication of what's been happening this year. So let me start with the core of our ministry, which is our Sunday services. And I just want to show you lots of graphs coming up, so fun times. So this is a graph of just showing in-person attendance on a Sunday for the 4 quarters of the year. And so the blue line is last year and the green line is this year. And so you can see that there's a consistent quarter-on-quarter. Well, firstly, you can see winter oaks don't like to come to church, so... And understandably, the place is freezing. Hopefully next year we'll have a warm church. So that trend is consistent. But you can see that the numbers there, it's a 28% increase in in-person attendance consistently, well, on average, but consistently between this year and last year. And so I think that's quite significant. That's almost 200 people, 193.5 to be exact, on average every Sunday that are attending over the year before, right? Which is really great and worthwhile to celebrate, and helps give us some optimism and confidence for things like budgeting going forward into next year. So it is great news. However, still some work to be done. We're still short of about 80 people on a Sunday compared to pre-COVID figures, right? And so that's a church that I don't yet know. Well, and so we've stalled the COVID years and rebuilding, but hopefully we'll continue to grow that way. I mean, that's just a remarkably encouraging figure, and hopefully that will continue next year. So of those 200 odd new people, coming to church on a Sunday, this year we welcomed 83 new members to our church compared to 70 new members last year. And in the last 13 years that Ndaba's been tracking the statistics, there's only one year where we welcomed more new members, and that was in 2010. I don't know what you all did in 2010, but something magic. But that's substantial to see this year. And it's so encouraging to see a lot of the new members we welcomed this year are even in the room tonight and contributing, which is amazing. However, what's also really interesting to note, so what we didn't have before COVID that we now have is this online ministry, which it still takes a lot of resources to run on a Sunday. We have Hanu over there in the studio on a Sunday, pretty much every Sunday morning, and others running that stream for us. And in 2022, the average number of views for a Sunday was 831. So that's quite substantial, 2022. And in 2023, this year, was 826. That's pretty much exactly the same. And so the increase in in-person attendance is not because people online are coming back to church. It's just new people coming to church. And I've said this before, but what's encouraging is that I think most of the online congregation is not people who would call Rosebank Union their home. I only have anecdotal evidence for this. I know there's a lot of people whose family members, etc., around the country listen in, and so basically who have other churches, and that's awesome, but who use Rosebank as a supplement. And I think that's awesome. We as a church want to be able to resource beyond the walls of our own church. And so just on that note, as I mentioned, at a Sunday service a few weeks ago, I think just important to realize, I've had to learn this coming to Rosebank, that there's pros and cons to being in a large church like Rosebank. And it's just important to know this. The pros are that with a greater pooling of resources, that we're able to do things that smaller churches on their own can't do, like can't have the kinds of equipment to be able to resource 800 odd people who won't come to the church, who won't serve at the church, who won't tithe to the church, but it's just being a blessing. Like, we're able to do that because we're able to pool our resources. We're able to welcome campus outreach, outreach team to a Wits campus. We're able to take them on board as a staff. To date, no other church has signed with campus outreach. We've renewed we had a 2-year agreement, 2021, that's been renewed for another 2 years. Like, we're still the flagship church that is doing what campus outreach in South Africa is trying to do with other churches that we've been able to do. And man, again, one of the best decisions we've ever made. And to start a Bible college in a township. And just maybe a slight perception there, just based on what Bruce said, most of the support for JBC and Alex comes directly from church members. There's some external support, but a lot of you in the room are giving to JBC and Alex, and we need you to continue to give to JBC and Alex. But that's incredible that a church can fund a Bible college in Alex. And so that's a pro, to him who has been given much, much is demanded. That's kind of a big deal verse for me, in my life, and I think that applies to churches as well. So it's a pro, it's a big pro, it's amazing. But a con is that in a larger church, it's harder to fully integrate into community. I mean, it's just much easier to slip in and out of a service unnoticed on a Sunday, less need to volunteer, which enables you to be really integrated into a community. And that's just a con. It's always going to be like that. But we did, at AGM this year, say this, we really wanted to this year see if whatever we could do to help people connect meaningfully with one another and to do what we could. And so that's what led to the Big Three of 2023, which we started the year out with this really basic idea of these 3 things to focus on: grow in your worship of God, extend your witness to the world. But what we were really interested in this year, just to see what we could do, is to nurture fellowship with one another. And at the beginning of the year in AGM, I said that, I've got my little quote here, I believe that if we can make progress on the community fellowship aspect of Rosebank, we will be an unstoppable force for the kingdom in Joburg. That was a lot of New Year's optimism, right? But I still do believe that sense of, if Rosebank can really grow in its sense of connectedness and community, it's just incredible what we could be. And so we set out to do a few things. Obviously, the heart of that is our community groups, and we've seen a 10% increase in groups this year to 56 groups in total now, and worked on the model behind that. But then a few other things. So Chill and Grill this year, just new thing, just trying to find some ways to help people connect. The coffee bar, which was part of Project Refresh, is a space where we're able to connect with one another. But I think a big deal for us this year was the launch of the Second Places ministry. For me, that's something I was so excited to do and so happy to do with my partner in crime here. It has long been an aim. It's long been something thought about. You'd be surprised at how little there is to resource churches to equip people for ministry in the workplace. And so the aim of Second Places ministry, for sure, is to, number one, fortify people in their faith in the workplace, considering the ethical and moral challenges that they face in the workplace. Number two, to encourage them to be salt and light. So that's why we launched it on that Sunday in the Sermon on the Mount. But we also knew that this would be another way that people could connect. So because of the vocational affinity, when you come into a room of people and you make small talk, what do? You talk about where do you work, and then you talk about like what hobbies you do. And if it's like someone's a cyclist, I'm like, then like we're connected, right? And if you work like, you also work in insurance, then you get connected. And so that's just another way that we can overcome barriers to connecting with people, is through vocational affinities. And I think for me, that's been the highlight of Second Places ministry. This year we've had amazing groups and chaplains running the groups. But in the big plenary events that we've had, I mean, I can say again, just scanning, sort of the room and looking at some of the data, more than half the people that attended those big functions are people who are not connected to Rosebank in any way, never met them, in my life. And I just remember the one story, some of you heard this already, but, guys coming in, just few weeks into Rosebank, really wrestling with the conversion crisis and should this be my church home, and just wasn't sure. Comes from a Catholic background, and it was the day we announced the Second Places ministry. And he's like, this is the church I want to come to now because this is my need. And so maybe it's not everybody's need, but for a lot of people, it's been their need to connect in that way, and I think it's significantly helped a lot of people to get more connected in community. So we're not done yet on that. There's still a lot that we would want to do in nurturing fellowship, but not unhappy at the progress so far. So speaking of new ministries, maybe just when it comes to this year of consolidation, so some consolidating that needed to happen with current ministries. So in our kids ministry department, our children's associate Ariel resigned in July. We are about to announce a new children's associate, busy working on the contract at the moment. But in the midst of that, just children's ministry continuing to run out of space on a Sunday, which is amazing. In the youth ministry, we had Ryan resign in March and eventually appointed Sebastian. And the good thing was we were happy to finally pay Sebastian for work, because he was the lowest paid member of staff for many years, paid nothing, but doing so much. And so it's been great having him on board and continuing the good work in our youth ministry. In the worship department, we had Dave immigrating to Australia in April, and Ali was here, was interim worship director for a while, and we're really happy to make her permanent in September. And then even on another level, like for example, like the 60+ ministry, Jenny Curtin, who is listening online, even though it's their 40th wedding anniversary, so kudos to them. And shout out to Jenny, took over local outreach apart from global missions, so just appointed full-time for local outreach, which included many things. It wasn't really supposed to include 60+, but she took it on, and it just done an incredible job. And I just keep asking myself, is there anything Jenny Curtin can't do? And I've yet to find something. And then on consolidating as well, I think a big ministry that we had to do a lot of consolidating and reconfiguring this year was in the counseling center after the closure of the center last year, and developing a biblical lay counseling model. Has probably taken longer than we thought due to people that we had on board helping us from outside the church, then going on sabbatical, and so probably happened slower than we initially anticipated, but have been able to, at least by the end of this year, done some equipping for CG leaders on basic counseling skills. The Walking with the Wounded workshop, that was a pilot project that we did, Justin and the team launched just a few weekends ago, had the first course. There'll be a lot more of that coming next year. We'll be reopening Grief Share, counseling community courses and things like that next year as well. And so we really are looking forward to next year scaling a lot of the lay counseling model, but we've still referred a lot of people to the now independent counselors. I personally have referred a lot, personally paid for people to go and see those counselors where appropriate, but a lot of extra counseling work has been done by our elders. And you'll know that when we changed the church structure back in 2021, a big part behind that new model was to have a large team of elders, most of whom we would call shepherding elders, that could do this work. And just a huge shout out to the elders. We had a volunteer celebration last weekend and mentioned this, but just once again, a lot of the elders in the room taken on a huge extra load in terms of personal discipleship and care and counseling with others, not to mention other pastors. So just be assured that counseling and care is still as available as it ever was for somebody, but we look forward to next year really being able to scale it. Now we've got a pilot trial. It was a huge success, and look forward to rolling that out fully next year. Other thing I want to talk about, so Project Refresh, or talk about finances in general a little bit. So as you saw from Bruce, another, in terms of consolidation, another great year when it came to financial consolidation. I don't want to comment more actually on finances, but just Project Refresh. So those who are newer to the church, who don't know, this was a fundraising campaign that we launched last year, July, aimed at raising funds to attend to some campus-related projects, some facilities. And so this is the original list that we came up with back then of items that we needed to attend to. There's basically 3 categories here. So you don't need to see the detail right now, but 3 categories. One was big maintenance projects, so things that had been kicked down from year to year to year because they're just too expensive and we never had the money to do them. For example, the seating in the auditorium is a 3 million expenditure, and so just never been able to do it, still not able to do it, but needs to somehow be planned for at some point. So there's big maintenance items. This church is 25 years old, and there's some big things we needed to do. But then there were smaller upgrade projects in there as well, so to cater for growth. So like changing this facility into a youth and young adult appropriate facility because of the growth in the young adults that meet here on a Wednesday night. The youth need a meeting place on a Sunday, and this space is mostly unused except for special events like this. And so that was to cater for just what we're seeing as growth in ministry. So there were some of those items, and then some smaller enhancements that we wanted to make to facilities, so like the Sinclaire Cafe. And so we completed the cafe this year, which has been amazing. As we've discussed, I was going to tell you about the sound desk as well, which is really because of a needs basis. And so we have made a purchase for one, and it'll be a while till we get one. So when Justin goes to the Philippines, someone else needs to lay hands on our sound desk, please, so we can continue to have Sunday services. And we were actually going to launch the Jerusalem Hall module this year. We had plans and some basic budget items, and I think it was in July this year, Brett, we were going to launch that and postpone that due to just kind of watching economically what was happening, and also because at the time we were seriously considering the fact that we might need to come to members and do a solar power project. And so we're still thinking through that, but we were ready to this year, man, maybe this is the year we do the Jerusalem Hall. And so we'll continue thinking about Project Refresh items. But the longer term strategy for financing Project Refresh, it's something that Bruce alluded to, but I want to just make explicit. So this is the simple strategy that will make sure we don't get into this kind of scenario again where it's been so many years and we haven't been able to fix up the facilities. So if you could put up the next slide. So this is for the computer programmers out there, if-then statement. So if our offering income equaled operating expenses, then all facility income could equal or fund facility enhancements. So it's a really simple idea, and would make sure that we would always have income to continue to improve the facilities and maintain the facilities. And so I've been thinking a lot about this and watching this to see how close are we getting to the place where offering income equals operating expenses. And so I've got a graph for you all on how that has been. So you put up the next slide. The engineers love the pictures, eh? So there, what you can see, the dotted line, so the blue dotted line is our offering income over the year, and the green dotted line is operating expenses. And so what you want to see is a gap between blue and green, where offering income exceeds offering expenses. The two solid straight lines are just the trend lines for both. And so if you look at that graph, you see, oh wow, like we started the year where there was no extra facility income available, where our expenses exceeded our offering income. And then somewhere in March, the equation equalized. Hooray! And then we started to just progress. But now you'll notice that look how that blue dotted line just rockets off the page in October. And that is because of some large one-off donations. Family or person in the church gave 500,000 in October, another person 200,000 specifically for the sound desk, and so that shot off the page. If you take those amazing offerings out, then you get next slide. So it changes quite drastically, eh? So that just shows you how we can, fiddle with graphs too. But I think it's important to just, to show you that we're close, but we started the year, if you take out this amazing month, and I'm coming to go back to this amazing month, but if you take that out, like actually we started the year better, and then, towards the end of the year, we're struggling a little bit more there. I suppose what I also wanted to show with just those two graphs is, the big impact that giving makes, and that the difference that can make with facilities, and making sure that our facilities are just appropriate for ministries, that are expanding to cater for ministry, for ministry growth. So for all of you who've contributed outside of your tithes and offerings to Project Refresh, we thank you, but mainly the message to members, as Bruce has thanked you all, is just consistent offering income. If that meets our operating expenses, then any surplus above that or any facility income can make sure that we can keep this facility in tip-top shape. One last item for me, just high-level consolidation item. Something we spoke a little bit about last year, BGM, is just on our Nexus Vector 2 aspirational values. I know we're running out of time, so I'm not going to go into it, but basically within that is our aspirational value to improve in diversity, racial diversity, as a congregation and staff and leadership level. And so just a few little figures for you there. I can tell you that for the new members that we welcomed into the church this year, it's pretty much almost exactly 50% white and people of color, which is encouraging for us. If you look at the elders that we've now have going into 2024, it's an 11% improvement diversity from up to 43% for next year versus 32% for going into 2023 versus 23% in 2022. Staff-wise, slight improvement from 42 to 43%. Importantly, just looking at next year, our pastoral team, being made up of 3 black and 3 white staff members, I think is encouraging. This also doesn't factor in, for example, campus outreach staff who are our staff, but also not our staff. So still some way to go on that, but has certainly been a year of consolidation and some improvements. In conclusion for me, just maybe one thing that's stood out for me for the year is back, I shared this at the volunteer thing as well, but back in January 14th, while reading through some of the Psalms, I came across a verse on January 14 this year that I specifically wanted to save for year-end functions like volunteer thank you and tonight. And that's Psalm 65 verse 11, if you can't read my handwriting. It says, "You crown the year with your good blessings, and you leave abundance in your wake." And I just wrote them in, may it be so in 2023. So that was January 14, this idea of you crown the year with your good blessings, and you leave abundance in your wake. And I think it has certainly, that's what we've seen. There was a dream, it began in January 14, that we would see that. We can only see the Lord's abundance in our wake. However, it has come at a cost. And what I mean here is our staff team are pretty exhausted. I've got to tell you all, it's been more than I've ever seen before. And granted, coming into this church, we've navigated COVID together and all of the stress factors there, and never seen the staff just so tired. I would say that this year would be the most stressful year we've had as a staff team, and I'm sure you all, as I speak to people, it's just interesting. We just thought that COVID would change our dynamics and we'd live, better lives outside of COVID, and I'm sure you feel the same. But like you, the staff of the church are not immune from personal life struggles that have come our way. I know sometimes it just seems like, church staff people don't deal with those things, but a lot have struggled with ill health, have family members struggling with health, had major health issues to deal with over the year, emotional stress factors, financial pressure, ministry pressure. And all that to say, these gains have not come easily. And through it all, I just want to say to my team, to the staff, they've remained focused, committed, unified, and maintained a cheerful disposition. And I just really want to thank them and commend them to you. The same goes for our elder team, as I mentioned as well, and we did get to celebrate some of that at our volunteer thank you event. So in light of that as well, just thinking about next year and our calendar, we've done some ministry planning for next year, just really wanting to think through a sustainable pace of ministry for next year, for staff, for volunteers, and for the members alike. So look out for some improvements on that for next year. For now, all I want to say to you all is, for now, please take care of each other. Just take care of each other. I think people are tired. We've got, Joburg does slow down, but we've got some weeks to go. And we're a church. Just take care of each other. Next year, who knows what next is going to bring. We've got major elections coming up, you know. I just want to say, just take care of each other. Like, we need each other. So let's take care of each other. Going into next year, from my side, just want to thank you all as a church for your faithful support and encouragement over the year, and for all of you who have contributed financially to the church, who have served and exhausted themselves in ministry as well. We salute you and applaud you. Thank you.
Right, the final home straight. I see our agenda. We're quite sneaky at Rosebank. We've got 7 items on the agenda, but we just number them up to 6 so that it makes it look like it's a shorter meeting. Okay, I've got one thing to do, one quick thing to do, and that is just to note the retiring officers. So the first one I'd like to do, and just for the purposes of this, if the persons are here, that many of them are, they could just stand just so that everybody knows who they are. So Johan, let's do deacons first. Johan Stradum. Johan is our double deacon. We call him our double deacon because he's a deacon on the HR committee and a deacon on the finance committee. He's been on the HR committee for 3 years. Bruce sort of worked out that he'd roughly worked out the date that he joined. I wasn't even able to compute that. I just worked out that he's been on the finance committee since Pontius was a pupil pilot. So apparently Ellis Andre roped him in and shook his hand and said, what do you do? He said, I do finance. He said, okay. So he sent someone around the next morning to sign a form so he could join the committee. So we've decided to give Johan a break. Just because he just deserves it. But also, Johan is also chair at Rosehaven, so he's not as though he's sitting around doing nothing. So thanks, Johan, for your fantastic service as a deacon over the last few years. Then we've got a number of elders that are who have finished their term of office. So I'd just like to go through them. The first one up is Sarah Njamu. So she's been an elder for 3 years in the new structure. She was previously a deacon for 3 years before that. So she's actually done 6 years. So she's most entitled to and requires to take a sabbatical. Sarah was also involved in the restructuring committee for the new structure. So she gave her input there. Sarah also has recently assisted on the call committee for Bafana Chabalala. And she did some specific work and interviewing work there, so we thank her for that. And I mean, Sarah has just had a huge influence on connecting people in the church through her care and gift of hospitality. She absolutely embodies the shepherding elder role. So thank you, Sarah, for your fantastic contribution. Next is Derek Muller. Sitting right in the front row, as Derek always usually does. So Derek's been 3 years as an elder, so you think, well, okay, well, this guy's not doing much. But in fact, you need to remember that he's been previously involved in Rays of Hope since 2000, including chair of the board for 6 years. Then he was chair of council for 5 years from 2019 to 2014. So Derek certainly came on board to assist with the new structure as an experienced elder, and we really have been blessed with that. He's a great source of wisdom and counsel, and he provides encouragement and support. And more importantly, Derek runs a pre-marriage course, and he's been doing it for over 10 years. And he's effectively our marriage shepherd, right? And it's just important how good marriages are for individuals as well as the community. So we really are grateful for your work in that space, Derek. Thank you for that, and to your wife that continues with that. And we know that he's continuing in that role, so thank you. Thank you so much for that. Then Helen Chinyata. She's been an elder for 3 years on the new structure. Helen is a member of the missions committee. She's been on that for 4 years, and she'll remain on that. She also heads up a sending cell for Martha Sabasa, one of our missionaries, so we thank her for that. Helen's also been willing to pray and support and encourage another fantastic shepherding elder. Helen's not here this evening, We do offer her our deepest love and condolences on the recent passing of her daughter, Mwanga. So we thank Helen for her contribution, and it's just a fantastic person to have on board. So thank you, Helen. And then lastly, there's this guy called Roy Campbell, which is a bit funny because it's like Richard said, how do the retiring officers? And then he said, no, you do them. So I thought, well, okay, so I've got to basically say goodbye to myself. But
I did write a note for you.
Yes, you did. But I deleted it. But I think, I just want to say, guys, it's actually, just when you find something you love doing, it ceases to be a job. Really, it does. And God's timing is always interesting to witness. He got me out of the Deloitte partnership and into the Kingdom partnership. So I think that was a pretty fair swap. I thought about, what does an EGB chairman do, right? And in essence, all the EGB chairman does is take your money and spend it, right? So if you're a parent and you have children, you understand completely that it's like having another child. So I'm your third or fourth or fifth or sixth child. Okay. But certainly God gets all the glory for the way he provides and builds for his church. I mean, we've seen Rosebank just flourish in the last few years, continue to flourish under God's direction and will, through his provision, through the support of everybody, through everybody pitching in and doing their bit. And we just give God all the glory for that. So yeah, that's just amazing. By the way, I was told that my sabbatical is not necessarily going to consist of watching the grass grow at home, but that's for another discussion another day. Right. Then the last two people I just want to cover is Gary Seath for our staff, two staff members. Gary Seath. Gary has been our HR manager for 6 years, providing valuable and skilled advice in the execution of HR solutions. So, we've got a big staff complement. It's been brought down, but it was over 50 people at one stage, and that required some really specialist HR skills. And we've been really blessed by having Gary on board. He's also worked with the HR Com that's been formed in the new structure to sort out many of the policies. And just today, Razan sent out a beautiful note to all the staff to say, all our policies are cleaned up and up to date and smart looking, so you can go and read them, right? So that's partly his help in terms of that. So Gary's contract comes to an end at the end of 2023. That's why he's effectively finishing up with us as a contractor. So thank you to Gary Seath. And then last but not least is the person of Shelley Seiler. If you were at her farewell on Sunday, you would have heard a lot, and I'm not going to go and repeat that, otherwise we'll be here until 5 to 10, right? But obviously 28 years of service from administrator at Rosebank Bible College to operations manager. Shelley is actually retiring, right? And I think it's safe to say, certainly from my observation as a FinCom member and as involved with the EGB, that Rosebank always got more from Shelley than her precise job description. She was PA to Lee, and then operations manager, but she also gave input at pastors' meetings, insight and wisdom, contributed to writing CG material, quiet time material, and for some of the series, and of course acted as the important office mom. So we really just thank you. So Shelley, thank you very much for being the counsellor of counsellors. Shelley will remain as a lecturer at JBC Alex, so she continues to continue with that ministry. So we thank Shelley specifically for that, and thank you very much, Shelley. Right, now we're on to the first item, number 6, election results. Okay, so to speed up things, I can just tell you that we've got confirmation that all resolutions have been passed to the requisite majority. Thank you very much for that. What we're particularly delighted for, and we'll obviously provide information in due course on specifics, but what we're particularly delighted for is assignment Alex, 97% support. Thank you, guys. Right, so if I could just do 6B, closing remarks. First of all, thanks to Ali and Kristen for the worship this evening. It's just fantastic to be able to worship God when we come to these meetings. Thanks to Richard for his update on, both his presentation on assignment Alex, and also for his update. Obviously, if you come to the AGM, that you'll get the full story and the 25-minute video. Ben-Hur from Jaim, but you can expect more to come in that space. But it was good to hear what's been happening this year, and then also, of course, thanks to Bruce for the budget presentation. For the meeting, I really want to just thank Jaim for putting all the information together. This is one of those times of the year that he looks a bit more stressed than normal around AGM and BGM time. That's because he's got to try and work out all the comms and all the voting and the QR codes and all the rest of it. So thanks Jaim, for all your hard work there. To his able assistant on his right, Brad. And of course, all the other people sitting there, Candace, great work done. James, thanks for your help. Okay, so thanks, guys. Of course, the whole team, it all works together, pastors, ministry leaders, and staff. I think we've said enough. You've heard a lot about Rosebank. You've got a lot to digest. This is not the last service for the year. You can still come to Christmas Day. carols. If you come to I worked out if you come to the Drakensberg Boy Choir one on the 28th of November, there's an Arosha picnic on the 1st of December, there's carols on the 3rd of December, and I think by that stage you should know Away in a Manger. Right. So no excuse for not being able to participate in carols there. A number of people did ask me questions for this meeting, and I do thank you for those. We are specifically dealing with some of those questions. Some of the questions we made sure we tried to deal with within the context of the presentations. So hopefully, if you were listening carefully, you did hear them on things like membership, Rays of Hope, care, and prayer. But we will be I'll also given you specific feedback. One of the things that you can do if you get back tonight and you found that this meeting's been so exciting that you can't sleep, you can go onto the website and click on send a question to Roy, and if you send it to me, it comes to me, and I love answering questions, and I can send you a whole story. So if you really want to know more, please do so. I'm up until usually quite late, so I'll watch out for any more questions coming this evening. But certainly, if you do have questions, please, this is a congregational church. We operate on the basis of interacting with members. So please, if you do have questions, if you have suggestions and ideas, and I do welcome those, please send them through. Of course, what I'll do is I'll make sure they're all nicely parceled and put into a folder on SharePoint so that the next EGB member can deal with them. Now, we'll sort out as many as we can in the meantime. So, with that in mind, I'm going to bring the meeting to a close. I just want to close with something out of Matthew. Of course, we have to have something out of Matthew, otherwise we can't finish up a session at the moment. So Matthew, it's an area that we've covered already, but it's in Matthew, and Jesus told his disciples, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man or woman if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay each person according to what he has done." And I just want to say thank you for all that you have done this year. And really just pray for all the things that you're going to do next year as well. Don't stop working for Jesus. It's great. Can we just pray? Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for your abundant love for us, your individual saving grace that brings us into your kingdom, Lord. We just thank you that you offer that invitation to us. We thank you that we have accepted that invitation as members of this church, as members of your kingdom, Lord. And so I just pray for a blessing over each member in this church, every single person associated with Rosebank. I pray for your blessing over them. I pray for them to just know how wide and how high and how deep and how wide is your love for them, Lord, and how you are with them through everything. And we know that that is the most important thing we cling to. That is the rock of our salvation, Lord. So we thank you for that. We thank you for your word. We thank you for the teaching that your word has revealed to us in your gospel, Lord. And so as we leave this evening, Lord, we don't take it so that we can make our church more comfortable, make our lives more cozy, make this environment just smarter. We do it so that we can build your kingdom. We can extend your good news to every single person in Johannesburg, Lord. And so we just pray that there would be an explosion of your witness from this church, Lord. And we thank you that you have provided the people to do it, you have provided the means to do it, you have provided the finances to do it, you have provided the facilities to do it, Lord. Thank you, Jesus, in your precious name. Amen. Thank you very much for attending, and enjoy the last of 2023. If you're traveling, have safe travels, and come back ready to start 2024. Thanks.